This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
For innovation leadership skills, executive presence is what allows you to influence and persuade others to support your ideas. Why do most people fail at establishing their executive presence? They don't know what makes up a strong executive presence. There are no classes for it. And we're going to correct that with today's show. Now, today's show is actually part 2 of how to create a strong executive presence. Last week, we covered part 1. So if you have not listened to part 1, make sure you go back and listen as we've covered the first 4 traits and skills you need to have a strong executive presence. This week, we're going to cover the remaining ones, and then we'll wrap it up at the end, tie it all together. Now, again, I cannot underemphasize the importance of having a strong executive presence. Look, we've all been in those meetings or those events where someone is kind of wishy-washy and not very clear and crisp on instructions. They don't have that aura about them of being a leader. That's what we're talking about. This is about establishing your strong executive presence so that when you step in or you engage in a new organization, you get seen as being either a leader today or high potential to become a leader at the highest levels. And why is this so important? Particularly for innovation. Look, ideas without execution are a hobby. And as innovators, we are not in the hobby business. We're about taking our ideas and making them real. And in many cases, we may have the technical skills or the subject matter expertise around this idea, and we think it's the greatest thing. But if you have strong executive presence, you've established strong executive presence, people will give you the benefit of the doubt and therefore give you that funding, give you that support, give you that air cover to take that idea and execute. And I've seen over and over again that those who have that strong executive presence have a much higher likelihood of innovation success. So let's kick off part 2. I want to talk about this first trait, which is really this whole concept around confidence, that you really literally exude confidence in your conversations and everything you do. Now, here are some body hacks, things that you would do just with your body. You'll find that confidence is not only about, how do you speak, but it is those nonverbal cues that will either establish your executive presence in the form of confidence or it will destroy you. So I've collected up a bunch of these, both some that I thought up and I've had other people send in some suggestions. So let's walk through these. First off, stand tall. Stand up straight. Don't slouch. Don't lean over. Don't be looking at the floor or looking down at your phone. Keep your head up. Keep your eyes looking forward. And this is one of those things that you don't think about. We kind of have a natural body posture. Maybe we stand on one leg, kind of lean to one side. Both feet stand up tall, eyes forward, not looking down, not looking at a phone. That is one of those kind of immediate nonverbal cues that set off signals. And what people have found is that if you lack confidence, you're tending to slouch. You're actually sending the signal of, don't come talk to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not comfortable with the subject matter. I'm not comfortable in this setting. That's what gets conveyed when you're not standing tall and you're slouching. So keep your head up, keep your eyes looking forward. So that's one body hack for exuding confidence. The other is, we've said this before, said it in part 1 many times, smile. Smile. Smile makes you look friendly. It makes you look inviting and open and wanting to engage and gives you that upbeat appearance. Now, you may be struggling in stress and you're trying to maintain your composure, again, as we talked in part 1. In this case, Smiling conveys that confident, hey, nothing's ruffling my feathers, everything is good. The third one, and this is one that, we probably have all heard from our mothers many times, which is don't cross your arms. A lot of people cross their arms across their chest, maybe cross their hands behind their back. Crossing your arms makes you just look like you're trying to fend it off. You're trying to protect your body. It comes across as, defensive almost. And it's really sends that signal of I'm not open. I'm not willing to engage in a conversation. I'm afraid you're going to ask me something that I don't know. It's playing that defensive mode, and that is one that you just don't want. So keep your hands not crossed in front of you. That conveys and has a much more open body stance. Now, here's one that I actually hadn't heard before. Somebody sent this to me. Just as you say, don't cross your arms, the other is do not cross your legs. And this is basically crossing your legs, let's say, away from somebody. So if somebody's in front of you and you kind of turn your body to the right and then cross your legs, it basically sends a signal of dislike, or I'm feeling uncomfortable. We don't think about it consciously, but that is the signal that we send when we do it. If you're highly confident, you have good confidence in yourself, you turn towards that person you're talking to and face them directly on. Now, the next body hack is one that I'm sure we've all heard, but sometimes we forget, or sometimes it comes natural. Strong handshake, a good, firm handshake. When I was a Eagle Scout advisor in the Boy Scouts, I am an Eagle Scout, so I volunteered for many years to be the Eagle Scout advisor, which is helping these boys, young men, complete the requirements to become an Eagle Scout. One of the things we taught, just from the standpoint of just confidence of being a leader, a youth leader in the scouting movement, is that strong handshake. Now, sometimes these kids would go overboard and they're going to crank down on your hand. Crushing the other person's hand will show that you can't control your emotions. Remember, trait number 1 that we covered last week is around keeping your composure. Don't let your nerves take control. Now, I'm going to take a quick side step here and show you kind of a funny story. I've met Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, many times. A lot of it when I had the CTO role at Hewlett-Packard. And the first time I met Bill, he did not have any kind of a strong handshake. It was kind of one of those dead fish handshakes. Now, if I had, knowing who Bill was, I had, a certain level of understanding. But when I shook his hand, my perspective of him completely changed. Now, many years later, Bill and I were in a meeting. We were walking out together. He stuck his hand out, nice firm handshake. Steve Ballmer, who took over as CEO after Bill, he had one of those crushing handshakes. I mean, he was cranking down on your fingers. So 2 different people, but it's amazing how just that handshake changed my perspective. Okay, another body hack is plant your feet. Don't stand there with your feet close together. Again, it kind of feels like you're trying to make yourself small. You're trying to fit into a small package. Plant your feet, good shoulder width, and don't sway back and forth. If you've watched me in videos, and there's actually a video that'll be coming out soon with my 2019 innovation predictions, you'll see me sway. That's one of my bad habits when when there's someone shooting a video of me, is I'm either bouncing up and down or I'm swaying left or right. And I have to constantly tell myself not to do that. Plant my feet. Another one is good eye contact. Make good eye contact with the people that you're engaging with. Now, don't get into a blink contest. Don't stare at them because it'll come across as aggressive. You don't want to do that. You want to come across as self-assured. Nothing to hide. I'm engaging with you. Good eye contact. And here's one, particularly with me with being on the radio, is lowering your voice pitch. Speakers with high-pitched voices are often seen as less powerful and more anxious than those that have a deeper pitch. So this is something you can go to a speech language pathologist, you can go to coaches, acting coaches, music coaches, and they will teach you how to lower your pitch. This one is kind of funny, but it actually proved out. There was a recent study of politicians where they had politicians with deeper voices and higher voices. And what they have found is those with deeper voices tend to get elected, an important piece. So confidence is crucial for a strong executive presence. Self-assured people kind of get through and breeze through life, but not everyone is naturally confident. So you will need to practice it. Get out there, try it, practice it. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. We are talking today about how you can create a strong executive presence. What I want to talk about in this segment is about how to build credibility. When it comes to executive presence, you can have the best posture, the best handshake, the best composure, but you have to have credibility. You can be missing out on other things, what I'm going to talk about over part 1 last week's show and part 2 this week's show. But credibility is an absolute requirement. Now, some people will try to fake it, and maybe they get through early on a couple of successes, but when people find out that they do not have credibility, their executive presence absolutely gets destroyed. So building your credibility is absolutely crucial. And so how do you do that? First off is you need to establish trust. You got to build that trust. Right? You must build that trust, earn the trust, and get people's trusts. If people like you, they will trust you. If they trust you, they will do business with you. Your trust account is more important than your bank account. If you have high trust, even if you've had business failures and done bankruptcy, but if you did it in the right way, you've made those hard calls, you've established that trust, you can earn back any money that you've lost in your account. If you have no credibility, you are done. So establish trust, very important. Next is exhibit competency. Become an expert in your field. Someone with that ability to not only, have the expertise, but analyze a situation, develop a bunch of options, and present those options in such a way that people can make a good choice. Be confident in your capabilities. Don't be shy. Don't be reserved. If you've got expertise, let people know what your expertise is. Don't be bragging. Humility is an important piece, but you have to exhibit competency. And next up is consistency. This is one that I have found that a lot of people struggle with. Everything you do, say, think needs to be consistent. It all needs to kind of hang together. Right? The messages you're sending out, the actions you take should all be in total alignment with who you are and what you do. Right? Don't see people you one way on the weekend at night versus what you are during the business day. If you need to be consistent. Consistency becomes credibility. Credibility happens when everything is consistent from the inside out. How you actually are inside and how that gets exhibited. This is not the fake it till you make it type of scenario. If you're building your credibility, you have got to be consistent and transparent, where people know and see who you actually are. Next up is you need to be authentic. You need authenticity to cultivate credibility. When you're trying to win trust, you can't rely on this, as I just said, fake it till you make it. The basis for establishing your business or your leadership is a solid foundation that provides tremendous, lasting stability no matter what changes could be ahead of you. You need to be authentic from that standpoint. You can't, treat people one way and act a completely different way. Next is exhibit sincerity. Be credible when it means being sincere. It means you don't say everything you think. Listen to that again, right? It means you don't say everything you think. Just because you think it, and people love transparency, doesn't mean you have to say it. There's some things that you would just think and never share. But at the same time, you mean everything you say. If you say something, mean it. Sincerity requires commitment and dedication and a willingness to be unmovable, always straightforward, no matter what. Sincerity is people coming alongside of people and knowing that you're there and that you're going to be unmovable and you're just going to continue to move it down the court. This next one is one that I personally am a big believer in, and that is respect everyone. Respect everyone. Holding other people's feelings in respect may mean nothing to you, but it could mean everything to them. It doesn't matter what level they are, what role they play. Treat everyone with respect. Not because you expect something in return, I'm going to do something for you and you do something for me, but because they deserve it. Titles are granted, positions are given, but it's respect that earns you that credibility and treating people nice, right? We've seen these on Facebook where someone that's, a very famous actor or actress or some famous politician takes a step out and greets the janitor or somebody sweeping the sidewalk, right? And they just showed respect. Look, it doesn't matter what our title is. Like I've got a CEO title now. I was CTO for a Fortune 50 company. I would hope that I treated everybody the same and people didn't see me different, right? Respect for everyone, not because you think it's the right thing, like, oh, if I do this is, but the fact that you truly in your heart believe they deserve it. That is respect everyone. Next is accountability. You must be accountable for your decisions and actions. And when you make a mistake, own up to it and take steps to correct the error. When you aren't so sure, just say so, right? You need to be accountable. Not everything's going to work out. And look, things are going to blow up in your face. You just need to own it. I remember first job out of college, we were producing this software product. We were hand making discs. That's how early we were duplicating onto floppy disks. We made, 150 copies is kind of an early version. And then we found out that I made a mistake and one of the files was missing. What happened? I owned it, and I went in all day Saturday and Sunday, and I hand fixed every disc and made sure every product was perfect before it went out the door. If you make a mistake, own it. And I think that one step I did earned me a lot of credibility. And then honesty. Develop a reputation for speaking with candor and honesty, what I call honesty with respect. Transparency is that fundamental keystone to business and the core source of credibility. Credibility is crucial for a strong executive presence. Without it, you don't have it. Without it, you can't build an executive presence without it. And people grant respect and acknowledgement of their executive presence based on a large part of a person's credibility. So keep in mind, though, credibility is incredibly hard to establish. It takes time, many, many years to build up that credibility, but it is very easy to lose. One misstep and it's gone. So whatever you do, never risk your credibility. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. We're talking today about how you can create a strong executive presence. And we've talked a lot about, we've got credibility and composure and all those elements. But one area, and I've seen people who struggle with their career because they don't have this next trait. And I've seen people who've been very deficient in a lot of the things I'm talking about in establishing executive presence, but they just take off. So what is this one trait that really has a huge swing on your executive presence? And that is Clear and concise communication. One of the biggest downfalls I see of young, high-achieving staff is weak communication skills. Now, I'm not talking about the ability to speak or even write well. What I'm talking about is how to convey information to a senior executive. Talking to a senior executive is different. It's different than how you talk to your buddies, at the football game on Saturday, or how you interact with family members around the holiday table. What I'm talking about is how do you convey that information? What I found is most are just way too wordy. They expect too much and effort on the executive to extract the point of the information. They're like, oh, if I give them this, 30-page document, they're going to be impressed. But that takes an executive hours to try to figure out what it is they were saying and what of that information is important, what of that information they can ignore, and how do they internalize that information to make better decisions. Again, most people are just way too wordy. So, these are some suggestions on clear and concise communications specifically to executives. And then when you give your established executive presence and you make that success in the career, you're aware of the kinds of communications that allow executives to be efficient, and you can actually coach people who work for you to be more concise, be more clearer in their communications. So first off is lead with your main point. Don't ask someone to get to the very end of a 1,500 word email to then figure out what the point was. Lead with the main point. Just like in a newspaper article, as a journalist, you learn, get to the point very early in what they call the lead, which is the first, one or two sentences in an article. Same thing when you're communicating with an executive, the first one or two sentences, not the second paragraph. We're talking about the first or second sentence. Lead with the main point. Number 2 is cut the jargon. You're not here to impress because you know some new latest jargon in the industry. The peers you work with, you guys may like, talking about, using slang terms like the state of your bandwidth. How much bandwidth do you have in getting your work done? Meaning how much time. But, if you're writing to executive, make it clear, be concise. Say, hey, my schedule's full. Don't say, hey, I'm a little bit behind. My bandwidth is taken up. Just be clear. Just say, my schedule is full. So get rid of the jargon. Makes it a lot easier and requires a lot less mental energy for an executive to figure out what it is you're saying. The other is use short, direct sentences. Now, you'll likely remember this rule from grammar school. Put the subject at the beginning of your sentence. So instead of saying, a new meeting date was set by the steering committee, instead write, the steering committee set a new meeting date. It just makes it a lot easier. They don't have to wait to the end of the sentence to figure out what it is you're saying. And also, watch out for sentences that go on for 3 or more lines. Shorter sentences are just easier to read, particularly in the digital form, trying to read an email. Another piece of advice I would give is if you're preparing, let's say, for instance, a keynote, like I just recently did this TED Talk. You can go over to YouTube, search for it, find it. But one of the advices that I got from a friend of mine who is a speech coach, and she was helping me with this keynote because I just had spent so much time in it. I had gotten my head wrapped around, and I couldn't even see the changes I needed to make. Sometimes you just need that outside advice. But Aaron, in this case, had just this really crystal clear piece of advice. And that is, if a sentence has a comma, yes, a single comma, it's too long and will be confusing when you're talking, when you're trying to give a speech. So literally, I went through my speech, found every sentence that has a comma, and rewrote it so that it was a shorter sentence, and maybe I split it into 2 sentences. But I found that by just going through that exercise, the talk was orders of magnitude better. So hop on over. You can catch it. It's actually, we did the audio in a show a couple weeks ago, but you can go over to YouTube and find it. You can just say search Phil McKinney, TEDx, and you'll find it. And tell me what you think about it and see if you can catch how I kind of, present. The entire transcript for that speech is at philmckinney.com. So if you want to read the text and see how I did it, you can actually take a look there. Next up is be clear with the ask. If you're presenting to an executive, let the person reading or listening to your information know what the purpose is. If this is informational only, or if there's an ask, if you're doing as informational only, tell them up front, saying, "Hey, there's no ask in this, in this discussion. I'm just sharing with you a quick update so you know what's going on with Project X." People put themselves into a different mental state versus, "Oh, I've got an ask at the end," right? So then they're going to start collecting up and listening a little differently to try to make sure they've got all the background data before you get to your ask. And if you do have an ask, then just make sure to be clear about it. Don't hide it and don't expect the other person to figure it out. Just tell them what the ask is. It's, I need 3 people, $100,000, and a year. Just be clear, right? Then you can have that kind of a conversation. I've seen people saying, "Well, we would need sufficient funding and we need management support." Well, what does that mean? Be clear with the ask. Another is if you're writing for clear communications, read it aloud. Now, look, I'm sitting here in my studio. I've got my tray here in front of me that's holding the outline for today's show. I spent a lot of time reading it out loud. You think that I would be able to do it in my head? No. I find reading things out loud absolutely critical. And what you find is if you're reading it and you stumble, if you stumble it, the other person's going to stumble when they read it. So clarify, simplify. I just find reading it out loud. And if you need to, record it and then play it back and listen. You may think you did it okay, and you may not realize that you ran into some kind of a glitch in the wording or whatever. It doesn't sound quite right. So I find reading it aloud is a great way for me to clarify, simplify the communications. And now the last point here, and this one is, one that, man, if I could go back early in my career and relive it, I would have done a number of things completely differently. And that is communicate emotion in person. Don't send the email. And gosh forbid, don't send it as a text, right? If you find yourself that you're drafting that response email, somebody said something to you or they sent something to you that's got you all upset, you may want to go ahead and write it. Do not put the send to email address at the top of the email. Leave it blank. Write the email. Get all of that anger out onto that email. Then delete it. Remember, what did we talk about in part 1? First trait in part 1 was what? Maintain your composure. Don't fly off because someone's upset you. Composure has a disproportionate impact on your credibility from the standpoint of people liking you and giving you credibility. Because if you're shown as being emotional and unpredictable, and people walk on eggs because they don't know how you're going to react to a piece of information, that will impact your executive presence. So, you do want to communicate emotions in person. Your ability to communicate is crucial for a strong executive presence. It's through this ability to effectively and concisely that you can persuade others to follow you, a key part keeping a strong executive presence. And every time you communicate, whether it's email, phone, blog, whatever, keep this in mind. You can build your executive presence or destroy it, depending on what you say and how you say it. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are talking today about how you can create a strong executive presence, an absolute critical skill for promotion, no matter what level you are within an organization, and If you're in the innovation game, a critical skill to get your ideas moving forward and convincing people to trust you to get that innovation done and to have the success that you think you can have with it. So let's talk about another trait. We've talked about 2 already. Let's talk about the third trait. The third trait, charisma. Now, many of you are going to say, hold on here a second. People just either have charisma or don't have charisma, and I don't know how to quantify. Let me quantify what I mean by charisma. Charisma is that ability to attract, charm, and influence the people around you. Let me read that again. Charisma is the ability to attract, charm, and influence the people around you. Charisma can help you rouse followers, gather people around you, and employees to band together in pursuit of a goal. It's that ability to get people to come and buy into your vision that if they come with you, they're going to achieve something that is high impact. It's going to change the world. And it's that ability to convince and attract. That is what I'm really talking about, is that kind of the core element of charisma. It really focuses on how do you really infuse the efforts of a team and individuals with a meaning and purpose. Someone who's got strong charisma, they set a strong vision that gets others excited. Best example of this I could think of is Steve Jobs around the Macintosh. He moved that team into a separate building. He raised the pirate flag above the building. He changed the code access to the building so only people on the Macintosh team could go into that building. That set a tone that just drew people. People were scrambling to get onto the Macintosh team. Later, Steve did the same thing when he put together the original engineering team that ultimately created the iPhone. Create a strong vision that gets others excited, and then let your passion come through. People will be convinced that the team can achieve the impossible. Now, warning, you have to have the characteristic we talked about in the last segment about making connections. Your ability to get people into your network who see you, who see your self-confidence, who see your executive presence, who attribute to you the almost extreme helpfulness, that see in you the ability to follow through and execute. All of those are critical foundational skills to build your charisma on top of. And people always say, hey, people are just born charismatic. And that's true. Some people just have it just supernaturally. But it doesn't mean you cannot learn it. Steve Jobs in the 1980s, when I met him for the very first time, did not have it. He had kind of a slick used car salesman approach, right? That really was a turnoff for a lot of people. After he left, he did Next, Pixar, came back to Apple. That's when he had his charisma. It's something that you can learn and you can become proficient at. Now, what are some of those characteristics? What are some of those key factors that you need to exhibit? Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is something for you to start on that you can practice. One is have confidence. Don't be, kind of, well, I don't know. And go in. If you're leading a team, do your research, be prepared, and be confident. You may not have all the answers, right? Don't fall into that engineering trap that everything's got to be, you got to be at 99 or 100% before you say yes. You've got to be willing to take some risk, have that confidence. You got to have, I don't know, I call it exuberance, but you got to have kind of that energy, that positivity that you're going to inject in the team that's going to get others excited. You got to have that optimism. You don't know what the end result is, but you're optimistic that this team is going to figure it out and we're going to win. You got to have that optimism. You have to have that ready smile. I talked about it in the last segment. You're going to hear it repeated multiple times through this series. People want to be around people who are positive. Don't be a downer. Don't be negative, right? Smile. Be ready with that ready smile. You have to have that expressive body language. shaking hands, being look approachable, that people can come up and talk to you. Don't hide in an office or hide in a cube. Be out and about. I'll do some playful stuff, maybe punch somebody in an arm that I know pretty well. It's kind of a teasing gesture. Have that expressive body language. And then have that friendly, passionate voice. Work on your voice tone. That is critical. Charisma is one of those traits that many think that you're just born with, as I said. While some have natural charisma, this is something you can learn and become quite good at. So start practicing and build your charisma. Now, for part 1 of the series on how to create the strong executive presence, we've covered the following traits: maintain your composure, making a connection, reading, knowing people, and charisma. The remaining traits we're going to cover in part 2 of the series. To make sure you don't miss part 2 when it comes out, subscribe to the show over on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. And if you know someone who could benefit from having their career stepped up with a dose of executive presence, why not tell them about this series? Word of mouth is how we've grown our subscribers to this show since the very beginning back in March of 2005. Yes, 2005. And thank you for telling others. To continue our conversation on this and other topics related to innovation, creativity, leadership, career, join me over in the Innovators community. Just visit theinnovators.community. Membership is free. The community is growing at an unbelievable pace. That's where I hang out every day. That's where I answer questions. That's where I'll throw ideas out, contribute to other people's posts. So hop on over, theinnovators.community. And I just want to say again, thanks for joining me. I know it's a commitment of your time to download and listen, and I greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.